Alrighty.
You can start first.
Yeah, we're recording now. Alright. How you doing today?
Fine, sir.
You doing alright?
Yep.
I'm surprised. Okay. So I'm looking over your docket here. I got your docket in my hand. And I just showed you that. Take one more look at it. You can see it's 4 sheets. I don't know, did you ever get a copy of that?
No, I have not. No.
Anybody ever, they didn't give you one when you came out from court or anything?
No. I was given nothing.
That's
No.
interesting. Alright, let me just snag that back real quick. Thank you. Alright, I'll give it back to you in a minute here. So I see you were basically, I'm just going to read what I can see basically here. I see 3 charges: theft by unlawful taking or movable property, resisting arrest and other law enforcement, and damage of a survey monument to call boundary into question. Okay, and I see you were, arrested. What date was that? Do you remember?
May 5th, 2016.
Okay. And your arresting officer was Officer Zachary Baker. Zachary J. Baker.
Yes.
And he's a trooper, state trooper, Pennsylvania state trooper?
Pennsylvania State Trooper, yes.
Okay. Alright, and I see one of even the damage to the survey monument was dismissed.
Yes.
Okay. So that's pretty much just basically what I can see. It looks kind of interesting. Can you tell me what happened?
I came home May 5th at 5:45 p.m. Started to grill the cooked chicken. Noticed a trooper had stopped up at the end of the driveway and sat there for 5 minutes. He went down the road. There's a little church across the road from me. He went up there. He came back to the end of the church driveway, sat there 5 minutes. He went up the street towards Telegraph. He must have turned around on the house up on the left, came back. He got out of the car. I told Gary, the guy that helped me that day, worked for me. I said, I'll go up and talk to the trooper. I know why he's here, about that metal stake I pulled out of the right-of-way up there.
Gotcha.
Went up there, presented myself to the officer nicely, offered to shake his hand. Said, I'm not shaking your hand, I'm here about property theft.
He wouldn't shake your hand?
No, sir.
No.
So, I said, I pulled the stake up and laid it down. It's in the right-of-way, and it's a hazard. I did not touch the legal surveyor pin that the surveyor company put in the ground. So we walked back to where the surveyor pin is in the ground that the surveyor company put in, and he's kicking the ground, and he asked me where it's at. I said, I laid it down right here. He said, is it in your house, your truck, the garage? I said, no. Like I say, I laid it down right here. What's not here? I said, I don't know what happened to it. So he's kicking the ground, and he's getting like this. He said, well, I should probably just cite you for it. It's a civil issue. I said, yeah. I really don't understand, not any reason for you to be out here on a civil issue. It's not really necessary for you to be out here. Well, at that time, he went off like a raging bull. But you pulled his stake, screaming and hollering. And my buddy's coming up the driveway, asking what's he doing? And at that time, he's telling me to put my hands behind my back. Well, I've had a stroke. When I'm standing, I have to twist a little bit to get this arm back, and he's saying I'm pulling away. At that time, he just threw me to the ground with brutal force as hard as he could. He's dragging me with handcuffs, trying to make me walk for a good minute, and then drops me on the ground where the road meets the dirt, and there's like a 6-inch difference. My left ankle was clearly behind my right butt cheek, and he's left me sitting there in intense pain. My girlfriend's walking up the driveway. He's yelling at her, you stay back, I'll tase you, I'll handcuff you. And finally she come up, and he straightened my leg finally. And at that time, 4 other troopers showed up, and the EMT. And I was put in the ambulance and talked to the EMT in the ambulance. And he said they've had prior issues with this officer, and that he would testify in court against me that it was brutality. And at that time I was taken to York County Hospital, x-rayed, and the trooper came in at 9:05 that night. He said, well, it looks like you're going to have to stay here and get better. I said, yeah. See, but I do have to read you your rights. He took his wallet out of his card, his wallet out, and read the rights off the card of his wallet. He didn't even have the rights memorized. And that was my last contact with Mr. Baker, except when I came out of fingerprinting and central booking after I got out of hospital. We bumped into each other in the hallway, and he didn't even acknowledge me. He just had a grin on his face. And that's all right now at this time.
And what injuries did you just sustain from that?
My hip was totally broken in half.
Wow.
They put a metal plate in it to hold it together. It should have had a whole new hip, but I didn't have health insurance at the time.
Wow.
And my left shoulder is really bothering me too. And I tried to tell him I had a stroke. You know, I can't. It's hard for me to put my left hand behind my back, but he was screaming at the top of his lungs where he couldn't hear me.
That's just a really sad story. It could happen to anybody.
Yes.
Wow.
But, you know, it was just
And I mean, this stake was in the public right of way. You mentioned something about it being 25 feet from the lane.
yes. So the surveyor stakes need to go back another 9 feet. I've already talked to the surveyor. That stake was 7 foot above ground grade, a hazard in the right of way. So I removed it and laid it on the ground so nobody would run into it, but over it, and sustain less injury, if any injury.
You provided me with this document. It's the affidavit of probable cause.
Yes.
I just want to read the officer's statement, what he wrote. I know you've read it probably over and over again, and I just want to read it out loud. All right?
Yes.
All right. On 05/04/16 at approximately 18:16 hours, I responded to upon my arrival to residence, I was immediately met by the defendant at the end of the driveway and related he knew why I was there. I questioned the defendant about his neighbor's missing survey stake. The defendant related the stake was a hazard. The defendant then related he removed the stake and discarded it in the woods. After the defendant's admittance to taking the stake, I gave verbal commands for the defendant to place his hands behind his back because he was under arrest. The defendant pulled away from me, ignoring my verbal commands and resisting arrest. Substantial force was effected on the defendant to take him into custody. The defendant was taken to the ground to gain control and effect the arrest. I request a fingerprint order be issued for the above listed defendant. And he signed it, and I see that there's no seal or no judge is actually, I guess, or maybe you got this before it was sealed, but that's interesting as well. What do you have to?
I got that at the preliminary.
What do you have to say about this? I mean, is he lying here? I mean, when he says that you threw it in the woods, did you throw the stake in the woods?
No, I laid it down on the ground.
What? I mean,
apparently somebody, the property owner that I didn't get along with, picked it up and called it in as being stolen, and it was put back, laid on the ground 3 weeks later.
Okay.
So I don't know how it disappeared and came back, but I didn't do it. When I pulled it, I just laid it down on the ground so nobody would run into it.
And you said it says just your neighbors.
Yes.
Okay. And it was just in the right of way. It was a hazard, and you pulled it up and laid it on the ground. Is what you're saying, basically.
Yes.
Okay. And when he says about the resisting arrest part, when he says he gave commands for you to place your hand behind your back, did you do that, or?
Well, like I say, I was trying to explain to him. Once he said he was going to put it down as a civil issue. I said, yeah, that would be the thing to do because I don't think it's necessary for you to be here for this. That's when he started screaming at the top of his lungs, and I'm trying to twist to put this arm behind my back from my stroke.
I got you.
And he couldn't hear me, and he just threw me to the ground.
That's yeah. I mean, he says he was.
He couldn't have heard me if he wanted to. He was screaming at the top of his lungs. I mean, he was just going off like a maniac.
So basically, you're trying to reason with this officer.
Yes.
And instead, he's just putting his hands on you and taking you to the ground.
Yes.
Yeah. And
with brutal force.
He even says
he's 6'3", about 230, and I'm 50% disabled with my left side from a stroke, and I drag my leg after work that day, every day. He had to notice something was wrong with me when I was walking up there. So
I just happened to pull another news article on this officer, where I guess a woman tried to kick him. He used the word substantial force again against her, and he used it here in his affidavit. Substantial force was affected on the defendant. Do you think that the force used against you was substantial or needed?
No, sir.
Were you armed at all?
No, sir.
Now, you had been drinking just a little bit, right?
I'd had one bottle of beer. My alcohol level was .02.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I see. So .02. So you could have actually driven a car.
Sure.
I mean, legally in the
Yes.
state of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, .02 is, you know, you can get that from mouthwash. I mean.
Right. That's what I say. I had one
Okay.
bottle of Budweiser beer. That's all I had.
Okay.
You know? I just went up to talk to him. I didn't think it was going to turn into a big ordeal like it did.
Well, I'm assuming if you'd had another beer or two, then it would have been drunk and disorderly out of the way.
Private property, I guess, right? Yeah, it'd be
Who
drunk,
knows?
you know, I don't know.
That's just it's a very sad story. It's obvious to me that something is not right, and now you're telling me that they want you to pay.
They want me to admit resisting arrest and property theft and pay a fine, and they'll drop the charges.
Property theft.
I believe it's property theft and resisting arrest yet, or damage to a surveyor monument and resisting arrest.
Okay.
Which I didn't do either one, so I'm not consenting to pay that.
Let's just go ahead and just real quick. I just want to go through these 3 little charges that you have here, the little ones. Let's start with the one that was dismissed, just real quick. The damage to the survey monument to call the boundary into question.
Correct.
Okay. It says here it's Title 18, 3312, Section A2, which ironically is between ecoterrorism and illegal dumping of methamphetamine waste. Okay, destruction of a survey monument. He says A2 you were guilty of. A person commits a misdemeanor of the 2nd degree if he willfully or maliciously cuts, injures, damages, destroys, defaces, or removes any survey monument or marker, and here's the key part, in order to call into question a boundary line. Once again, why did you remove the marker?
It was a hazard, 7 feet above ground
Okay.
grade, and it was in the right of way.
So at no time were you concerned about the boundary line?
No, because I wasn't messing with the boundary line.
Okay.
No.
So, I mean, clearly that's probably why it was dismissed, because according to the officer's own written affidavit, he says the defendant related the stake was a hazard.
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm assuming that's why that was dismissed. Now, let's just skip past this resisting arrest for a minute. This is the charge that's really they're trying to stick you with, the theft by unlawful taking of movable property, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're getting with you. That's the only arrestable offense here, really.
It was a metal stake that I pulled down. It was above 7 foot above grade. It was in the right of way. It was a hazard, and I pulled it up and laid it down on the ground. That's all I did. I did not take anything.
Absolutely, as the pictures reflect. You know,
Right.
it's unbelievable that this is, you know, like we said, it could happen to anybody.
Yes.
All right. So let's just look at this theft real quick. Okay, it's again, let's see, Title 18. This is Section 3921, and it's just A that they're calling you on here. Theft by unlawful taking or disposition of movable property. A person is guilty of theft if he unlawfully takes or exercises unlawful control over movable property of another with intent to deprive him thereof. And I think that, again, the last part of most of these laws is the key part here. Movable property of another with intent to deprive him thereof. Were you trying to deprive anyone of anything?
No.
Were you trying to get back at your neighbor?
No.
For anything? Did he wrong you in some way where you felt like you needed to move only one property marker that was in the middle of a public easement?
It's just we've lived there for 12 years and always parked in that right of way, and he just put that there. I don't know why he put it there, probably just to be rude or whatever, but it was in an illegal spot. It was in a right of way, so what I removed was not on his property, and the surveyor pen needs to go back 9 feet. I've already spoken to the surveyor company about that, and they've consented they need to come back and move it back 9 feet.
Gotcha. I mean, yeah, it's
Yes.
You know, even if someone's property, I don't know if you're aware, extends to the road, that public easement, even if they own that property, someone can walk on your property if there's no sidewalk. You know,
Right.
You know this, okay? Yeah.
Yes.
So you're very aware of the public easement
Right.
laws and stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I can't see. I mean, again, back to the officer's affidavit. I think that's just right there. The officer himself admits that you related the stake was a hazard.
Correct.
You know, it doesn't say anything else here that I think, you know, would make you guilty of this theft charge. It literally says right here in the law, you'd only be guilty if you intended to deprive.
Right.
someone or some property of something, you know.
Right.
Okay, so there's the theft charge, by, and lastly we have resisting arrest and other law enforcement.
Like I said, if he couldn't hear what I was trying to tell him, I have to turn to put this arm behind my back.
Can you do me a big favor? I don't want to demean you at all, but can you stand up and maybe walk for me, just so I can see you walk? Just kind of show people exactly how you normally walk. Okay, you can come on back. Thank you, man. I just wanted to show people exactly. And why do you walk like that?
From the metal plate in my hip.
The stroke?
And a partial disability from my stroke too.
Gotcha.
You can see the strength in this arm.
Right.
You can see there's no muscle tone in this arm.
Can you turn around and put your hands behind your back like you're being handcuffed? How hard is that for you? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you can barely even get.
I tried to explain that to him, but he wouldn't listen to me.
Right. He's just yelling at you, telling you to get on the,
Yes.
and then
You're under arrest.
threw you on the body, slammed you on the ground.
Yes.
And I mean, that's a lot of force to break a hip. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Hurt.
You want to sit back down? I'm sorry. I just wanted to show everybody, how this gentleman here walks and lives on a normal day-to-day basis.
I sit in a backhoe every day, and it's no fun. A lot of days I can't work all day because of this, because of the pain I'm in.
And here he is trying to explain this to an officer who's about to arrest him for pulling up a survey stake. Not even the actual stake, it's in the ground, but just the marker.
A metal,
because it's in the public easement, in the right of way.
Metal fence post a neighbor put up, just I think to be rude, but it was not the legal surveyor pen.
Do you mind me asking how much, do you know how much it's going to cost to replace and fix that hip?
Well, right now my bills are $65,000. It's $80,000 to replace my hip.
And
I've been in pain for the last year. I run a backhoe for a living, so it's no fun climbing in and out of it with the vibration all day driving it. You can't take no pain medicine because it's considered a DUI if you're driving a motor vehicle. So I have to go all day in pain every day.
And basically, I mean, so what they want from you is to just admit theft and pay a $200 fine, and you're on your own?
I guess they expect me to be on my own, yes. All my medical bills and future bills to get fixed what he did to me, yes.
Now, do you know anything else about this officer? Like how old he is, or any record he has among the community?
I was told he was 25 years old, so.
Okay, that's pretty young.
Yeah. Yep.
Is anybody else had dealings with him that you know of? I know it's like a tight-knit community up there.
I think there's been some problems with him, but I don't have actual proof there's been problems with him, but I've heard or hearsay, but I can't sit there and say that. Okay.
Well, it's I really appreciate your frank honesty.
Yes, sir.
The whole story is just heartbreaking, basically. It's why I asked you to come here today. I really appreciate it. How long do you guys drive to get here?
1 hour.
1 hour?
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I think that a lot of people watching this video will take appropriate action and try to, help and set these cowards back on the right path.
I hope so.
I'll be doing my best. I'll be doing my own separate little investigation in there, and I may actually just take a trip up and see how Officer Baker is doing.
Okay.
You have court on September 11th of all days, huh?
Yep, 9/11.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I tell you what.
And see here, it says you already owe $9.47.
For 2 EMTs, it's been
subpoenaed.
Subpoenaed to testify, yes.
Oh wow. All right.
And that's actually, I think, for me, against the officer.
Well, I'm going to do my best to make sure this gets out there and it gets rectified. I feel really, really touched and almost heartbroken for you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, buddy.
All right. Have a good one.